Hello, everyone. This is Mary Lurson, Executive Director of the NAMM Foundation, coming to you this afternoon on a Friday, live from Summer NAMM here in Nashville, Tennessee, in our Facebook Live with our great partners at EnterTalk Radio and at the NAMM Foundation. This is our Talking Up Music Education podcast, where we're honored and privileged to chat with musicians, music teachers, music students, people who love and believe in music and music education. And I am so thrilled to have Aaron Smith, better known as A-Train.
The
How did
A-Train.
that happen? How did the A-Train happen from Aaron Smith?
Well,
Percussionist, by the way.
yeah, I played
Yes.
in a band called the 77s, and we did a live album. And I had a drum solo in this one song every night. And this one night, the lead singer introduced me as the A-Train on percussion. And it stuck.
Well, you know, I think it means that people really like you when they give you a nickname.
Right, they do.
Think of that.
Right. It's a
Right?
warm fuzzy.
And you're going to stay with it. If someone likes you that much,
That's
you
right.
keep reminded, right?
I know.
Right?
I had to get used to it, though.
Yeah.
Because, there was a period of time where I hadn't heard that in a long time, And then when people started, especially when Facebook started, and people would refer to me as the A-Train, I was like,
Is this
I don't know
really?
if I like that
Is this
anymore.
really how? Is this the handle I'm on? The handle I've been given. The universe has given me this handle.
Right.
But is it?
How did they know?
Right. That's great. Well, for all of our podcasts, episodes, we start with we have one really serious format, and then we go all sorts of directions.
Yeah.
But we want to know the origin stories,
Okay.
your music-making origin stories, especially going back to early training, and if there were influential teachers and opportunities and school-based stuff. So, what's your origin story?
Well, I'm an only child, and my mother was the only other musician in the family. She sang first chair soprano at our church from age 17 to 82.
Wow.
And
Amazing.
yeah. And so I had to accompany her to choir rehearsals once a week, and of course church service on Sunday. So I got a love for music from her. And
Did you fall asleep though while she was rehearsing sometimes?
no, I didn't.
You never in the pew. You never just go to.
No, I didn't.
I had a mother. We had the same mother. My mother was in the choir, and director of the choir, and I had to go to all the.
Yeah.
And every now and then, I just had to lay down in a pew. And
I could have though,
Yes,
because
right.
I was sitting in the dark because the only lights that were on were
I
on
know.
the
Sometimes you
choir.
just kind of just have to lay down.
Yeah,
And,
I probably did.
Right.
I don't remember. I went to
Right.
sleep.
Yeah.
But our choir director was the band director at high school,
Oh wow.
and he played in an R&B band in my hometown, which is Durham, North Carolina. And it was two saxophonists in a rhythm section, keyboards, bass, and drums, guitar. And the other saxophonist was the band director for the junior high school.
Oh my goodness.
So
You got luck here.
yeah.
Luck rolled into one. That's great.
and so you couldn't get into the band until the 6th grade. So my mom talked to the choir director, and he encouraged her to let me join the band. And for some reason, she wanted me to play drums. I never asked her about that, but that's what she was interested in, me playing drums. So 6th grade, we have band like 3 times a week.
Pretty good.
And we're in the school cafeteria.
Yeah.
And
normal,
everybody's
normal, typical.
Everybody's
Right.
learning how to play their instrument.
At the same time.
Yeah.
Right.
So the drummers could only play on Friday. Because we played on the wooden tables.
Yeah.
You didn't have an instrument. And we had the Baldwin Band Builder, Book One. I think that thing has more rest in it than quarter notes, So that's how we started. And it was about 25 drummers when we first started.
my
When
goodness.
we ended, it was 4.
Because that's a lot of waiting.
There's a lot of
A
waiting.
lot of
and
waiting
yeah,
to play. And you only can count, there's 4 beats in a measure, usually at that age.
right.
And, you can say 2, 2, 2, 3, 4, 3 through 3, 4, 4 through 2, right?
And
Only
the-
so
the
long.
rest of the time you're waiting.
Right, only so long.
And you're playing on a table.
Yeah.
So from there, I went to the 7th grade, and my mom asked Mr. Mitchell, Dr. Mitchell was his name, how's he doing?
Really good for a table.
Yeah, really. He's
Really,
great
yeah.
on the table. He said, well, get him a drum. So my dad went to a pawn shop and got me a snare drum, and I played that snare drum throughout junior high school. And I came out of my shell in junior high school because of that drum. We had to, we would march around the baseball diamond that was near the junior high school every day for band practice. And the drummers would slow down. And Mr. Edgerton, the junior high director, well, nobody wants you to slow down, right, when you're marching. And so I was the only one that would keep up. So he put me in the head of the line and had everybody follow me around the field. And that was my debutante sort of
Right.
coming
Your
out,
front
you know.
line, you
Yeah,
were-
I had
right.
friends after that.
Isn't that
I was
wonderful?
social after that.
So you hear, first of all, like all the magic ingredients were there. Church.
Mm-hmm.
When we think so many people emerge out of to a musical life, because there was this sometimes there was a church moment there.
Right.
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 I mean, we know the music in the church is, especially like in a place like North Carolina,
Mm-hmm.
right? I mean, there are just vibrant, and even in our urban areas now with, church choirs and church bands,
Right.
and
And
the
worship teams
Worship
and stuff.
teams. I mean, it's just, it's a really vibrant musical place, and a mother who cared, and if you could play on a table for a year, you might get a drum. I bet that
Right.
was right. Somebody,
A reward.
right, and then and obviously it was available in school.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It wasn't sure was far from perfect with the after tables but a lot of what we care about at the NAMM Foundation is making sure that what you had opportunity for, what I had the opportunity for, is that every kid has
Yes.
at least some pathway.
Right.
Because it might not be in church, it might not be at home, but that it's available in school.
Yeah, that's very important because
So it was really your start, right?
yeah.
I mean,
that was
once you led the band around the baseball field, you were hooked.
I was done.
It was your thing.
yeah,
right?
and everybody was hooked on me.
And that was part of it,
Yeah.
right?
And from there, and then the exposure to music, to the marches, and then we had classical, we had a concert band, and it was exposure to that kind of music, that genre of high school concert band renditions of many great pieces. They had ways of arranging that made it a little simpler to play.
Sounds like you
You know?
had a couple of really good instrumental music teachers.
I did.
I mean, with that diversity of repertoire, and they were very deliberate about it, and a good curriculum.
Very. And we attended a lot of festivals and contests. I played timpani in concert band. I was a drum captain in marching band. And I went on from there to Clark College. Clark College wanted to start an all-male high-stepping band like Florida A&M.
Was Clark College at HBCU?
Yes, it's in Atlanta,
Terrific.
right across the
yeah.
street from Morehouse.
Okay.
And I went down there with my best friend, who was a French horn player and drum major. And I think we had about 35, 40 guys in the band. And it was the first year for the program, so it wasn't fully supported or materially.
It was developing.
Yeah. So that was quite an experience as well.
Building something too. So you went to college. You graduated college.
No, I didn't.
No, but you went to college and got got some more experience.
Yes.
And learned. And then when did the set drumming and the, all the pop music and
Well, that
when-
actually
how
came
did-
in high school.
Okay.
Yeah, my band director, Mr. Mitchell, said I should play, and he wanted to put together a jazz band. It never materialized, but there was a drum set there, and I started working in the band with both my music teachers. They were like my chaperone, and so that was a great experience because here were two mentors, two guys I really looked up to, and not only was I seeing them in school, but I'd see them on the weekend.
They put you in the band.
Yeah, they put me in the band.
Yeah.
It was great.
Wow, that's fun. And then a little bit of stint in college. You got the chops together, and then what'd you do? What was the next step?
The next step was I joined. I got a job playing with a Motown artist, Chuck Jackson. He had a hit called "Any Day Now," and I toured. We played what they call the Chitlin Circuit.
I know what that is.
Up and down the East
That's
Coast.
part of the popular music history.
Yeah.
It's got a big chapter on the
Yeah,
Chitlin
it does. And I did that, and one of the dates was in Detroit, Michigan, at a club called the 20 Grand Club. It was a very famous R&B club. A lot of Motown acts have done live records there. And this producer at Motown, Mr. Norman Whitfield, came to the show, heard me play, and offered me a job at Motown, which I accepted.
Which, it's like...
But before I could start, I got drafted.
Oh, boy.
This is 1971.
I was going to say, right in the Vietnam era.
Yeah.
Right.
And so I went in the Army. We didn't have like cell phones, Facebook and all that sort of stuff. You just had the landline phone. And so when I left home, if he was calling my house, he wasn't getting an answer because my mom was at work during the day. And you didn't have an answering machine or anything like that. So I managed to get out of the Army because of I was allergic to the detergents that they used to wash the uniforms.
Isn't that wild?
Yeah.
No one has ever... We never knew that was happening also. Really.
Yeah.
And you were just so irritated every time you...
just irritated my skin, and I went to the company area doctor, and he said, well, you can stay in the Army, and we'll give you medication for the rest of your life, or you can get out. So I got out. I wasn't really prepared to get out. I was kind of looking forward to staying in by that time. I only had 2 more weeks of basic training. But he was it was just his demeanor about it that for some reason I thought getting out would be the better thing. And went back home, got my job back with Chuck Jackson. We went back to the 20 Grand. Norman comes to the show and he goes, "Where have you been?"
Oh my goodness, wow. And how long between the first meeting and the second meeting?
It had been about 5 months.
5 months,
Yeah.
almost a half a year.
Yeah.
That's quite something.
Yeah.
You were trying to reach you, and
Yeah.
right. Meanwhile, so I went to the Army, right?
Right. That's why
And I got
he
a
couldn't
skin,
believe it.
and I
He was
got a
like,
skin
"What?"
condition, right?
Right. I said, "Yeah, man, I've been like in Fort Jackson, South Carolina."
Right. And
So, what?
right. So you then, Motown picked you up. Your discography and who you played with is just massive, right? You had serious run, and you're still having a serious run.
Yes.
Right.
I am.
So when I chat with someone like you, and there's not a lot like you, but then that they're having this serious run, and they work hard at. You worked hard at it, and you obviously
Yes.
had talent. You had some basics covered in your early childhood and all this things, and you had a supportive mother and community, right? I think it's kind of great that you didn't have to go to Vietnam or do active duty.
Right.
You know, I mean, that was a blessing.
In hindsight, yeah,
right?
it's great.
And so the best way for me to ask this question is share with us the highlights of this last 30 or 30 plus years that you've
Okay.
been moving around this network of, you know, the kind of the names of of this millennial period. I mean, of the Temptations and, you know, I mean, I'm going to let you name the groups because there are
Okay.
a lot, and the artists, and so it's kind of, you know, what was the highlights? Is it, I can't believe I get to do this, or this was challenged but I overcame it. You know, I mean, this is the things that, and an accomplished career. What stands out for you?
Well, one thing that really stands out to me and has kind of made the difference is that I studied privately with Alan Dawson. He's a great jazz drummer in Boston. He played with Dave Brubeck and a lot of other people. And when I started studying, I wasn't that disciplined. And I maybe had about 3 lessons with him before he pulled me aside. And I was telling this story yesterday. He had this binder notebook, and he said, "Come over here, Smith, sit with me." And he flipped through all the pages in the notebook, and they were all covered. And he said, "Every one of these guys in this book is waiting for your spot." And that did it. You know, from that point on, I practiced like crazy. I still practice. I still practice to this day.
10,000 hours.
Yeah.
The 90,000 hours like I did in school to catch up with all the people that only needed to do 10.
Right.
I needed to do 90.
Right. When they say, you know, talent is one thing, but talent is very overrated.
It's, yeah,
gotta
1%
put in-
talent, 99% hard work.
Yeah, you got to put in the work. And so that exposure to him really changed my life, you know, because up to that point, I was just going by instinct, you know, and going along with things as they
Which
came.
is pretty good.
Well,
It got you noticed.
yeah,
right?
yeah. And I ran into Miroslav Vitus, who's the bassist from Czechoslovakia. He was the original bass player with Weather Report. And he was very inspirational as well. And I did a stint with him. I moved to Sacramento. Well, I moved to San Francisco first, and I started working with this punk rock group called Romeo Void. From Romeo Void, I moved up to Sacramento and did session work at Exit Records as a studio musician. I did that for a couple of years, and during that course of time, I played with, I joined one of the bands there at Exit Records called the 77s. We were a Christian rock band, and I was in the 77s for about 10 years.
Terrific.
Yeah,
That was a good run.
it was
An unusual run.
unusual.
Yeah.
The last 2 years were kind of weird, but I was still there for recording and some touring. And I moved to Nashville, and I toured with Rich Mullins, Michael W. Smith, Charlie Peacock, did numerous records when the studio scene was really happening here. And now I am playing with Kevin Max, who is a member of the contemporary Christian group DC Talk. Yeah.
So it goes on and it goes on.
Yeah, it still goes on. Oh, yeah, and I volunteered the Jazz Workshop, which is an educational place here in Nashville where you can learn all things jazz, you know, any instrument, vocalist. I volunteer, I support a vocal instructor, Connie Florence, and we have a great rhythm section trio that supports her, and it's people who want to learn how to sing jazz.
Oh, terrific.
Yeah, they have a great professional rhythm section, you know, and it may be their
Do you have
first time.
Do you have an adult program?
Yes,
Can
adults do
Can I
it.
come and do a residency? And when we all dream to, there's two things I would probably trade in is to play jazz guitar.
Would you?
Perfect. Oh, just the versatility that you hear on jazz guitar. And the other thing is to, is to sing with a jazz trio or sing with the.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
mean, we all have sort of fantasies, right?
Yeah.
Musical
yeah.
fantasies.
I can't sing, so,
Yeah.
but I understand it. So as a drummer, I approach it that way.
So, what advice would you have? We work with a lot of young people, a lot of college music students who come to the NAMM show, and their faculty, and work with a lot of young people that are aspiring for a creative life in music. They would say, "Oh, to be able to do that and that and that, and go on the road with, and what kind of advice would you share as someone who's lived the life, still living the life of a professional musician? What are the essentials?
The essentials are technique, a vocabulary, musical vocabulary, as diverse as possible, and then you kind of have to set your sight on what you want to do.
You got to have the chops.
You got to have chops.
You got to have chops.
Technique is vital.
It's just you got to
No
have
way
it.
around it.
And if you don't, like your teacher said,
That's right.
right? There's a lot of people
There are a
working
lot
hard
of
to
people.
have. Right.
They're on the freeway right now coming to town every day. They're waiting tables, waiting for that opportunity.
Yeah.
So you got to have technique, vocabulary, great personality helps.
Which includes like the work ethic,
Yeah.
right? The humble, the humility.
Right.
Willingness, the flexibility.
Exactly.
You're there to make it work, right?
Sacrifice, being willing to sacrifice in numerous ways, and just dedication to the art.
Loving it,
Loving it.
no matter what.
Yeah, because if you love it, you're going to do it, and it's not something to be toyed with, really, So I think musicians have a very precious gift, because it goes out to people who are may not be musically gifted or talented or have that interest, but it does something to their lives, because a piece of music can transform you back to a moment, make a moment, that's really special that you can always go back to and really affect your own personal well-being, When two people get together, they have a favorite song, stuff like that. So musicians have a really important part to play in just humankind and in helping us to be more human and loving and
That's
forgiving and
beautifully
stuff.
said. That's really, thank you for sharing it that way. How many days of the year are you on the road now?
Not that many. I got.
Thank goodness, right?
Yeah.
We should say,
Right.
add thank goodness.
Right. Thank goodness. I have a beautiful wife. I love staying home with her. I have some dates this summer where I'm going to be gone, and later on this year.
Is it kind of the road touring, like been there, done that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I did it well.
Yeah, I did it well. It was fun. I was just talking to a friend of mine at one of the exhibits, and he's got like 150 dates to do this year, and he's not looking forward to it.
It happens, I think.
Yeah.
And then I think that's the time for that little bit of introspection, right?
And that's another thing I would tell people, aspiring musicians, that while you're doing it, make preservation for the future, for sustenance and security of some sort. If you're making money, make some provision for your future, because it's not going to last. It never does. You know, it's not doesn't.
You may think it's going to.
Yeah,
it's
you
gonna
may think
feels
so.
like it.
Yeah.
Or you never want it to end.
Right. It's like when we're young, we think we're going to live forever.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, a little private story of my own as a classical musician, playing, in orchestra pits and things like that. Not on Broadway, but in various events. And really, it was so interesting that my whole life was headed in that direction.
Mm-hmm.
And then kind of hitting in my early 30s, mid-30s, I remember one night so distinctly sitting on the stage with the orchestra, looking out at the audience, and I said, I really want to be out there.
Really?
Because it was because they'd all had a little dinner together,
Mm-hmm.
and they were settling into their seats to be basically entertained, and I
Mm-hmm.
was the entertainment.
Yeah.
And I kind of went, this has been wonderful. I did it to the absolute nth degree
Uh-huh.
of my ability. And I also was beginning to be surrounded by, maybe they were always there, but the musicians I was playing with were not as positive as they were when I started in that world.
Mm.
They were starting to, it was becoming routine.
Yeah.
And I really kind of felt that I loved music so much, and it was such an source of inspiration to me, and my
Mhm.
standards for it were very high for myself.
Yeah.
That I kind of took a break. I took a break because it was like that moment of introspection, and I started doing other things, and But
Do you ever pull out your flute every now
well,
and then?
I did for a long time, and then I play the piano or the Great American Songbook. That's where the jazz part of it,
Mm-hmm.
and I sing very loudly. So I have this vision of people walking by my house on the way back from the train from New York, and then I'm sitting and I'm singing very loudly and playing the piano, and they're like, going, "What is going on in that house?" And I'm sitting there, sing very loudly.
Yeah, that's great.
So, and I'm learning the ukulele online, and
Mhm.
It may be something I do someday, but it's all good, And
Yeah, it's all good.
And I transferred that passion into this work, which is telling the story and promoting music education and advocating for it, and I'm able to keep. It's more passionate work than I've ever done.
Mm-hmm. That's great.
So it can translate, but that's such an important message that you're sharing with everyone.
Yeah. Well, you're having an influence
Yeah,
in music
I'm proud of that.
and preservation of.
And the promotion of it, and
Yeah.
I want kids to have the chance I had,
Mm-hmm.
the chance you had.
Mm-hmm.
We're working for the chance that we had,
Right.
and so the next generation of kids, whoever they are, that they can express their culture, they can express their identity,
Mm-hmm.
they can express their shared community.
Right.
And there's we just have to keep working on it. So,
Yeah.
any final thoughts to share?
Um,
Being here at Summer NAMM and being surrounded by friends, old and new.
I had a feeling the other day. It's like for years I could never get in a NAMM show because I didn't have any sponsorships.
Well,
and now I've been to two. I went to Winter NAMM, and here I am at Summer NAMM, and here I am with you. It's like God works in mysterious ways.
well, and now you're a podcast episode guest. You can
Yeah.
always come to a NAMM show. Just said,
Yeah.
you just let us know.
Yeah, thanks to EnterTalk Radio.
EnterTalk
Those
Radio, our
guys.
good friends there, sitting
Yeah.
behind there, working their magic with technology. We should interview them sometime.
Yeah.
I've got a lot of questions I could ask them. Oh. All right, I'm here with the A Train, a.k.a. Aaron Smith, percussionist, drummer, musician extraordinary, man of
Thank you.
spiritual soulful depth and inspiration. Loves
thank
his
you.
wife. I love a man who says how much he wants to stay home with his wife.
Yes.
You gotta love a man who says that out loud and let the world know.
Yes, it's
Gentlemen,
true.
this is a man to emulate.
It's true.
It's true. It's just terrific. So thank you all for joining us for this episode of Talking at Music Education with the A-Train, Aaron Smith. Thanks for joining us. Talking at Music Education, a podcast of the NAMM Foundation.